Hello. I thought today that I'd talk about one of the wonderful things about recovery, and that is not feeling cold all the time. And what got me thinking about it is that, well, it suddenly got colder here in Colorado, and I'm from England, so it's not like I'm not used to the cold and the damp. I am. But when I was sick, I was cold. When I was underweight, I was cold the whole time. I was cold all summer in the UK. I just felt like I could never get warm, and I would hover around the radiator. I'd just stand with the backs of my legs against the radiator in our house all day, and just the winter's the worst, just feeling cold and miserable all the time. It was relentless. It never really went away. And I think that in a way I did know that this was due to me being in a malnourished state, but I kind of also didn't know it, or didn't allow myself to know it at the same time. Anyway, well, one thing recovery has shown me is that it definitely was due to my malnourished state. And then when I remember how I was as a child, I was actually one of those people that sort of runs hot the whole time, so I didn't really ever feel the cold. And then, of course, when I was underweight, I was freezing the whole time. And one of the wonderful things about recovery is that I've gone back to being one of those people who doesn't really feel the cold. I'm generally warmer than most people are, which is, in comparison, I don't like being hot the whole time, but I wouldn't say I'm hot the whole time. I'd say that I'm a normal temperature, but I don't feel as cold as most people do, maybe. And I love that. I just absolutely love that. In comparison to being someone who was feeling freezing the whole time, it's wonderful. The cat is chewing the microphone. Oh my God, you're so naughty. But what made me think of it today was, the weather's turned cold today, and one of the other things that I'm doing in my life, well, I'm very into horses, and I sort of help run a non-profit, which is a therapeutic horse program. It's a fabulous place, and I'm learning how to trim horses' feet. So I'm sort of going around with a really experienced barefoot trimmer in Colorado, and he's showing me how to trim horses' feet so that I can help trim our horses. And today that meant driving out this morning and standing in a field for an hour and just standing there watching him trim this horse's feet in about 20-degree weather, whatever temperature it was this morning. It was pretty cold, and there was a wind as well. But it just struck me how I was cold. It was not a warm morning by any stretch of the imagination. But I wasn't the same sort of cold that I used to be when I was malnourished, when I was underweight. It was this is appropriate for the weather that we're in sort of cold, not I feel like I'm going to die sort of cold. And the other thing that really is wonderful about being in a body that's no longer in a state of malnutrition is that when I get out of the cold, so when I got back into my car and drove home, I was warm again within a couple of minutes, whereas before I felt like I used to get cold and then I'd stay cold all day long. Anyway, so to illustrate the difference, I'm going to use my animals, because I have a really kind of weird and quite funny and cute. This is Worm, and Worm is a Chinese crested crossed with a toy poodle, and Chinese cresteds are hairless dogs. So as you can see, Worm doesn't have much hair, and that's why her place is by the fireplace, because Worm is cold the whole time, and she really hates the Colorado weather. And I actually brought her, she's from Liverpool, so Worm's used to English weather, and now she's here living in Colorado, and the winters, Worm doesn't go outside very much. So this is me when I was in malnutrition. Although Worm isn't in malnutrition, this is normal for her. But I would have been like the hairless. Now this is me out of a state of malnutrition. Stinky has this beautiful, glorious coat. He's warm all of the time and comfortable, aren't you? And so that's what I feel like I am these days, now that I'm not in a state of malnutrition. Much more comfortable, nice and warm and cozy. So yeah, that is how I use my animals to show the difference between feeling warm or cold in a state of malnutrition versus a state of nutritional rehabilitation. The latter, the warm and cozy one, so much better.